Please help me welcome Ethan. So hello.
Hi.
We're gonna sit here and chat for a little bit. Hopefully it'll be just as much fun as when we were chatting at the coffee shop.
All right, I'm excited.
All right.
But this is the fireside chat part?
Yeah.
By the fire.
Right.
Yeah, I'm excited. I told some people we were going to light this later. So that's great.
Steve might not be happy about that, but yeah.
It's all right. He'll forgive us.
Did he stay?
He left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start at kind of the beginning, just like a little bit about your background and, put in maybe how bicycles were, a part of your life.
Sure, yeah. So I'm not going to go all the way back, but when I was a kid, I was raised by a father who didn't really believe in cars, and he still doesn't. I don't think he really believes that they're a significant part of our society. And so I'm sure I'm gathered with a group of like-minded people, right, who don't believe in cars. Who's with me? Anyway, he was a little crazy, my dad was. So he's when I was like 1 and my brother was 3, he sold our car, and he'd said, we really need to get around by bicycle for the next 15 years in Kalamazoo. No, I'm sorry, in Traverse City, where it's colder and snowier. So so he sold our luxury Volkswagen Beetle, and we just got around by bike for the next 15 years in Traverse City, and it was really cold, but we were happy. We had a great time, and we had really good hats and gloves and mittens and such, and we had a great time. And so, therefore, bikes have been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, and they've been a very significant source of learning and kind of a feeling of self-efficacy and empowerment and joy for as long as I can remember. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
And so you're talking about Traverse City, so what brought you to Kalamazoo?
I came here for school. I moved here in 1990 to go to Western and fell in love with it.
And what is your schooling background, or what did you study?
When I was at Western, I initially studied theater because I thought that would be a good way to make a living. I found out it wasn't for me, right? And then I studied communications and kind of got into the human resource field, and eventually moved into counseling and psychology. And so I went on with my master's degree and got a master's degree in counseling and psychology. And I was saying earlier that piece has played a big part in my life. I was in the mental health field for 10, 15 years doing that work, and ultimately that had a big part on my influence to start Open Roads. So.
Is there a particular story, or when did you start thinking about putting together something, doing some kind of project with bicycles and kids?
Yeah, so the long and the short of it is I was at a workshop at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, which a friend of mine invited me to, a guy named Eric Sweet, who used to live in Kalamazoo. And so it was a workshop in which we could take any idea that we had, any passion, any interest, and turn it into a community project. And so I decided, I remember we were in a big room, and I was kind of making drawings on a page, and I wrote a bubble with bikes in it and a bubble with kids in it, and I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do with this. Maybe I can have like a riding program or some sort of something. But then I realized that for a long time, when I was growing up, I didn't know how to use tools. I didn't know how to fix things. You know, I know there are some mechanical and powerful engineers in the room, and probably a lot of people who know how to fix a lot of stuff. And I wasn't one of those guys. I didn't know how to fix anything at all. I remember my dad he needed to like move a table around something, so he took a hammer and banged a hole. He like tore a hole in this shelf because the leg wouldn't fit. So he just tore a hole in the shelf with a hammer, and wood chips and splinters were flying. And he said, "I did a good job." You know. Now the leg went through the hole, and you know we had a dining room after that. So so I knew like I can't do anything with tools, and I never was taught how. And I thought other kids should definitely know how to use tools. So I had the idea of teaching kids bike mechanics in some sort of program. And I knew that I didn't know how to do any of that, so I knew I would have to bring other people. But what I could offer was people skills, human skills, because I knew how to play nice with others. And so I just put those two things together, the social skills and the bike mechanics skills, and eventually put together a tiny little proposal.
I'm going to backtrack for a second.
Yeah.
Because you said social skills, so how did that, kids don't know how to use tools. I'm probably one of those too. So how did the social skills part come up?
Yeah, there was no natural fit. There's no natural connection between mechanics skills and social skills.
Right.
I guess I knew that, you know, in working with the people that I worked with and working with the kids and the families that I've worked with, even if you're a genius with a hammer or a screwdriver or any kind of tool, and you cannot get along well with other people, you will not be successful in the world. You're going to have to know how to get along well and play nice and cooperate and collaborate. So I knew that I had to kind of connect both of those sides of the brain. You had to be someone who could put things together and take things apart, and also listen to other people and express yourself in a reasonable and rational way. Because if my understanding is we have all come to this point where, you know, we're all functioning members of society, and you know, we're able to get bicycles and houses and cars and things like that. And we do that because we are able to treat other people well, and we can build relationships, and we can play nicely with others. So I knew that I had to add that part in order to help kids be successful.
Okay, so you wrote the small grant, and did they approve that for a project?
They did, yeah. The small grant got me $250. I always like to brag about that. So that pretty much created instant wealth for me. So I went out and I bought a new house and a new car with that $250.
Like a Fisher Price house?
Yeah, Fisher Price. No, so the $250, I was really excited about that because that's the first money I was ever given, you know. And the proposal was less than a page long, and I thought, I must be onto something if they give me $250. And then I started making a budget, and I'm sure people here have made budgets before, and I got like to the third line, and I said, yeah, that's not going to get me far. I'm not going to get real far with $250. So I went back and I said, can I have a little bit more? I just need a little bit more. And they made me write some more stuff and kind of put some more flesh onto that idea, and I got a Good Neighbor grant for $1,000 to add to that $250, and then from there I could do a couple things. I could get some tools and buy some. I think we got T-shirts from that. We got 4 T-shirts and some tools and some parts and some space and some staff. So that the 1,250 is what pushed me over the edge. Yeah. So.
But how did you find people to be a part of that? To, to be a mechanic or?
So I just started asking a lot of people where to go. I had friends who rode bikes, and I knew that they would know of other people, so I could do the people skills thing if I could find somebody to do the mechanic skills thing. So I went to a friend of mine who was, I can't remember the first, a friend of mine who was connected with K College, right? And tools and resources, but he brought some stuff too.
So the team to start, was it just the two of you, or were there other?
It was just the two of us, and we contracted with a social work agency, and so they brought, I think they brought another support staff, and they brought all the kids, so we partnered with them to get our kids. Yeah, it was really, really small. I remember it was very, we were proud when we could lay like 8 tools out on the table. We were really excited. We took a picture of that and we're like, look what we've got. We got some tools from the hub, and I got some tools from my basement, and I don't know what a hammer's gonna do, but it must fix the bike somehow, and it's pretty stoked. Yeah.
So how did it progress from there?
Slowly, really, really slowly. So we did that program. We also got other people on board. We got Just Good Foods on board. We got Water Street on board. We got the People's Food Co-op on board. So we got local businesses to donate food, because we thought that we've got to give these kids healthy food, and kind of talk about the importance of healthy food choices and a healthy body, and so we got other people on board, and then I think we did another couple programs with Family and Children's Services, and just kind of started scrapping together different partners, different community partners. So we knew somebody who worked at the Y, so we said, hey, can we do a program at the Y? And he was like, no, you can't do it. And I said, but can you give us somebody who can say yes? Because he said no, and I said, yeah, give us somebody. So he gave us another connection at the Y, and so they said, yeah, you can do a program. And then we got someone from community mental health on board, and then we got somebody from a summer camp. We got somebody, the nature center. We got somebody from the nature center on board. And then I had friends who were working with the Peace House. So it really felt like a stone soup kind of situation, in that like everybody knew somebody who could bring something. So as I'm telling people about this, they said, oh, you should call Jerry from the Peace House, or you should call Jen from the Nature Center. And so I just kind of collected every possible option and called all those people and said, hey, I got a cool idea. Will you sit with me for lunch, or will you meet with me for coffee? I got a great idea. And so, we got enough people to eventually just give us anything. I remember one, we were never getting paid for these things. I remember one partner we approached said, yeah, you can do a program, you just have to pay us $500 if you do your program for us. And I thought, wow, this seems really funny that I'm giving you this idea and this program, and you're going to charge me $500 so we can. And so, we found some things like that. But for the most part, people were really, really willing and cooperative.
So what's the time frame? So all those different organizations that you're talking about and businesses, so what's the time frame that the stone soup was
cooked?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a slow boil over probably, it's hard to say. I mean, from the inception, from like the day we got the grant till the day we started doing regular programs, probably like 3 or 4 years where we were very, very slow in our progression, where we would do maybe 2 programs a year at first. And we would do like a single event at the library or something like that. So yeah, it was a really, really slow process. I mean, I got 1,000 no's. 1,000 people said, no, you can't do it. Not 1,000, but it felt like 1,000. Yeah, it felt like a lot of people. Because a lot of people said, no, we can't do that. Cool idea, no, we can't help you. Nothing, we got nothing for you. But keep going. That was
So
fun.
did that ever discourage you?
Yeah, it did. Absolutely. I mean, as I kept like pitching the idea, it is discouraging to have people say, no, this is not possible, or no, that's a dangerous thing. You don't put tools in the hands of kids. That's not safe. They're going to hurt somebody. And so it is. I mean, you start to wonder, like, I don't know if this is great. I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if I can make a go at this. And so, yeah, there's inevitably a lot of people who will, for one reason or another, say that's impossible. Like you can't. I mean, up until I don't know. It was, I think, up until we got the space that we have at Riverview, there were people saying it's just not going to fly. I mean, you first of all, you probably shouldn't do this program. And then once we started doing the programs, people said, you'll never make it on your own. Like, you should not become your own entity. It's just too risky. You can't do it. So, did I end on a bad note? Let me try again. So it was great, and people loved us.
That reminded me. So when you're doing all these programs, I mean, you had the one grant, but what did you were saying becoming your own entity, and you work with an organization,
right?
So you'd still be considered like a nonprofit.
Yeah. Well, we were never. It took us like 5 years to become a nonprofit. But in terms of funding, we had very, very small funding for a long time. There was one point in which we wanted to do a program at I don't remember, like at the Nature Center or another partner organization, and we literally couldn't scrape together the money to pay people or to buy tools or parts. And so I remember sitting in my den thinking, I have to find money. I have to get some money so we can make this happen. And so I put out an email to like all of my aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents and my brother and my parents and their friends, and I just like kept clicking, add this person, add this person, add this person, and I composed this kind of like pleading letter and saying, hey, I've got a really good idea, and maybe I've talked to you about it, maybe I haven't, but if we're gonna make this happen, we really need your help. I really need something from you. I need a little bit of money. And we didn't have I don't even think, we didn't have we weren't an organization, so we didn't have a bank account, so people were writing checks to me. And so people wrote checks for like $20, or I think one of my uncles wrote a check for $50. And we were able to get like $350 from that process. And I got really excited because it was that money that pushed us over the edge. And then I said to my mechanic, Kevin, or whoever it was at the time, I said, we can do this. We just got $350, so we can do this. So I can pay you, and so we can buy the tools and the t-shirts and the journals, and we can make this happen. So that was another turning point where I realized, like, if you scream loud enough and say the right things, people will give you support.
What's going on in your life? around all this? Because since you weren't necessarily making money personally, so what are you doing? I mean, you were working, I would guess.
Yeah. Well, the other piece is I had a wife and a child, so that was pretty cool. I had those people, and yeah, this is the tough part. I had a family. I had just started a family at the same time I started Open Roads, and so yeah, this is like the part where I have this family and then I have this idea, and I said, hey, I'm still going to work my day job, and I'm going to take on this extra project because I don't think a child is that much work. So can you kind of hold this baby while I start an organization? And if anybody has ever had a baby, you know that it's a lot of work, and you shouldn't do other things while you're having babies. So, so my wife is ridiculously kind and supportive and understanding, and so to answer your question, I had a full-time job. I was working as a school counselor, so I had this full-time job, and I was spending a lot of time sending out emails and running off to programs and going to meetings and pitching the idea, and I don't know why she tolerated it, but you know, she was at home with Otis, with our little baby, and while I'm, you know, like talking to Bobby Zell at the Boys and Girls Club, or you know, Steve Springdorf at the Y, or somebody, and saying, hey, can you give us money? And then my wife is calling and saying, hey, can you come home for dinner? And I said, yeah, after I do this thing, I'll be right there. So, yeah, so that's the other piece of it. So I had a full-time job, and I had just started a family, and I had no business doing this. It was absolutely insane to like try to start an organization while you try to start a family. This is crazy.
You're actually not the first person I've heard do that.
Yeah, I guess there are other people as dumb as I am. It's great. It's really comforting.
It's like the entrepreneurial spirit. Like, I mean, did you feel like you just written it in your notebook that one day, but did you feel like you had to do it? I mean, you even said, even just to find money, it's like you had to keep going. So
yeah,
she saw that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like once I got this idea, and once I did a program and saw how cool it was, like what it meant to the kids. I mean, like that, I didn't even kind of talk about that piece, but the kids who did it really liked it. They really had a good time, and it really meant something to them. So at a certain point, I felt like I can't turn this off. I can't just pass to make this bigger. And so I looked at other similar organizations like a Boys and Girls Club, or any nonprofit that I've worked with, and they talk about that thing called the board of directors. Yeah. And so I said, all right, I'm gonna start a board. So I reached out to like 4 friends, and I said, do you want to meet at the bar? And we can talk for a while about this thing. And so they said, all right, are you buying drinks? And I said, yeah, okay. And so so we met at the bar, and I think we met at Uzo's, which it was like a mild bar, like a tame bar. And so I got these people, and I said, I want you to meet every month, and I'm going to give you guys ideas, and you tell me like thumbs up, thumbs down. And so I got 4 friends, and it was the structure was, there was no structure. I just got these people together, and I said, hey, I got an idea. Let's do a program out in the woods at the nature center. And they said, oh yeah, bad idea. And they shut that down. And, how about let's do a program in my basement? And they said, oh yeah, worst idea. You can't do that. And then I said, how about my backyard? And they said, okay, yeah, you can do that. And then so it was it was just me kind of running ideas. And I said, so will you call people or will you help me out? And they, a couple of them said yeah. And then so we eventually kind of formed this structure called this advisory board. And it was basically, me kind of taking a page out of organizations that had made it work. Because I knew, like, I can't do this on my own. I'm just not smart enough to do this all by myself. And so, so I looked to those 4 people, and I eventually said, we can't meet at the bar anymore because we're not getting anything done. It's not a productive environment, if anybody wonders about that. It's not an environment that's conducive to progress and innovation. So we met elsewhere, like in my friend's living room, and then we started to formalize our structure. I feel like I'm going on, but we started to formalize our structure, and they kind of pushed me and held me accountable, and started to say, you have to keep your receipts when you buy things. You can't just leave those in your shoebox under your bed, or you have to look at outcomes, like what are programs doing for kids. So you have to take pictures, and they just kind of pushed me and made me do more stuff, and so that was really helpful.
But it sounds like it. So once you had more programs then, because they were helping you do this.
Yeah.
And then I guess, where did it go from there then? Okay,
so from there, I think the next piece of it was we got someone who said we can make a go of this as our own 501c3, and so I had a woman who became our board president who wrote the chapters and bylaws to become a nonprofit, and worked with an attorney to file the federal paperwork to become a nonprofit. And so we became a nonprofit in 2013. And then that's right about the time we started to collaborate with the Kalamazoo County Land Bank. And we're fortunate enough to be invited to partner on the Riverview launch space. And I was saying earlier that space used to, it was a really scary property. It was really like rough looking, if anybody knows like that space on Riverview Drive. It was an old flower shop, and it looked like it was kind of it looked like a place you'd never want to stop if you were along the trail. Like, there were broken windows and dirty puddles, and it just looked like bad things happened there. And this woman, Kelly Clark, who's the director of the land bank, approached me and said, hey, you want to move in here? How about this place? This would be good, right? This is a great idea, for kids. And I thought, no, this is a horrible idea. Yeah, I want to do it. Yeah, let's do it. And so so she and I worked together, and we collaborated for about 1.5 years to raise the funds to renovate that spot. It was about a $1.8 million renovation to turn that scary, scary place into a beautiful spot, which is where it is now. And that's when we moved into Riverview Launch, and I guess that's where we kind of, in a sense, established some credibility and some visibility. And so people thought that it's possible for us to make a go of it.
So space meant something.
It did. Yeah, it did. It was important for us to have space. It was important for us to have kind of a place to stick a flag in the ground and say, we're not just a concept, but we're an organization, and we can host kids, and we can have a space to put our tools, to put our bikes, to call our own, a sense of kind of belonging and a sense of environment. And I was really anxious about that. And a lot of people on our board were really anxious about, like, how are we going to sustain a space? How are we going to actually get the resources to sustain a physical shop and an environment? And so it has worked. And this year, 2016, is the first year we've had a waiting list for programs. So now it's moved from knocking on doors and saying, will you please host us at Open Roads, to people coming to us and saying, we really want our son or our daughter, or we really want our organization to partner with yours, and we want that to happen this year. And so now we have a waiting list. And so now
how many years was that then? From the time of the first-ish, the grants to having the waiting list?
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah, it was 8 years, 2008 to 2016. Yeah, and during that time, I also stepped down as the director, so I was running a full-time job or doing a full-time job and running Open Road simultaneously, which was totally crazy. And a second child came in there as well, which is even better crazy. And so, and then into 2015, the end of 2015, I stepped down as the executive director, which is very exciting for me, which was really, it was terrible and fantastic and exciting and great and difficult. And I'm so glad I did it, because the woman who runs it now is a woman named Erin Dene, who some people know, and she's a genius. She's fantastic. She's like 24 years old and has the maturity and the wisdom of like a 25-year-old. of a really smart person. She's great. She's wise beyond her years, and she does a beautiful job running the organization.
Was it a hard decision to have to make that? Something that you've been working at, as much as anything else for those 7 years.
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard. I knew that I was the right guy to start it. Like, I knew after a while that I had the tenacity to start the organization. But after a while, I was like, I realized, number one, this was not mine anymore. Open Roads was not mine. Like, I stopped owning it and stopped thinking of it as a part of me. It was just this thing in the community that I was really invested in. It was beyond me. It was bigger than me. And I eventually realized I'm not the guy to run it. I need somebody different to take it to this next stage. And so that's when we started looking at a new executive director. And it was really tough, because I think anybody who started something knows that your identity becomes wrapped up in that, right? Like, who you are is this business, or is this organization, or is this concept, and that's a lot. It's a lot to contend with. And so, after several sessions in therapy and lots of soul searching, I said, I am gonna pass this on, and so I did.
I have one more question before I ask the audience if they have any. So, because I read something, because one of the programs was going into neighborhoods.
Uh-huh.
So, I want to know more about the garage stories.
Yeah, the garage. So when we didn't have much money, right? When we didn't have a lot of resources, we would store things in friends' and neighbors' garages. And so again, this kind-hearted man named Eric Sweet, who was my neighbor across the street and a big, huge supporter of Open Roads. He basically like developed this idea for this outdoor program. And so he said, I've got a garage and a driveway, and so we're going to do this cool program called the Fix-A-Palooza. And the necessity is the mother of invention, and so we didn't have other places to program, so of course we're going to use a garage and a driveway and his front yard. And so we started doing these outdoor pop-up bike clinics. So we would take a parking lot or his garage or my backyard and do these pop-up clinics where anybody around the neighborhood, I lived in the Edison neighborhood and I love that neighborhood, and so we would just kind of put a sign up and say, and we would flyer around, make a little flyer and say, hey, kids, is your bike broken? Come on, bring it on down. And like a bunch of kids would come down the street and like drag their bikes, and they were all busted up and run over by cars and had one wheel and one pedal, and they'd say, hey, can you fix my bike? And we'd say, sure, we'll try. And so we would take these half bikes and fix them. But the garage days were really, it was as grassroots as you could possibly get. I mean, we were working out of a really small one-car garage and one toolbox, and so everybody had to share. Can I please have the whatever tool we had? And we had to kind of be in community. We had to share the little resources that we had, and we had to just do it in a garage. And those were great programs. They were really, really fun and messy, really messy.
Imagine that. I like the name, Fix-A-Palooza.
Yeah, the Palooza thing. I thought of that.
Right.
Clever. I just thought it had a good ring to it. Yeah, it's nothing to do with Lala or any of her friends.
So I'm going to turn to the audience, and if anyone has a question, I'll bring my microphone over to you. Anybody have a question?
Okay, so really quick, Ethan, you're talking a little bit about the garage days, but
Yeah.
do you really feel like where you're at now as far as location-wise and changing the programming more, do you feel like you were helping more of the, kids that you were originally looking to help by being in the neighborhood versus being in an area that isn't next to a neighborhood exactly right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, Jessica, you've seen us through the garage days and beyond, right?
Yeah.
As we started to contend with moving into a more established space, we moved from grassroots in the neighborhood to a physical space on the trail, which is not, to your point, it's not as accessible to kids, and we are not as connected to the community as we were during those garage days, and we're aware of that. So as we kind of move forward, we still have in mind doing a lot of outreach. So we still do outreach at schools. We still do partnerships with the Boys and Girls Club. We still do partnerships. Like we're working with interfaith homes. So working with a program on the north side. And because I definitely recognize that not all kids are able to get a ride or are able to find transportation to come to our location. And so we're still very conscious of doing programs where kids live, whether it's a housing community or whether it's a neighborhood or whether it's their Boys and Girls Club or whether it's a school. We're very conscious of doing programs where they live. Because we also, when I think about the garage days, those are messy because you have no control over who comes and who goes, and so we would get a lot of people. I remember there were a number of gentlemen who would come by, and it was clear that, how shall we say, they were not really the kind of role models we were looking for our young people. They were interested in bikes, though, which is cool, but they were not really folks that we wanted to, shall we say, influence our kids, right? They just didn't seem safe. That's the bottom line. So, if you're out in the neighborhoods and out in the community in kind of an uncontrolled space, you also welcome in kind of random factors where you don't always have control over who comes in, who goes. But that's just part of the deal. We still want to do programs out in the community, still want to do programs in which kids can easily get to where we're going. I remember one other quick thing, when we're doing a program in a parking lot, there was a promotional event for like a dance association called Deja Vu, or Showgirls or something. And they were setting up their program right behind our program. And so we had these kind of two competing events where these entertainers were over here promoting their business, and we were over here promoting our business. And so you can't always control what happens, but we don't. Those are good. They make us stronger. That's the thing.
Is there someone else who has a question?
So your program has been around for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had kids who were there at the beginning come back to you more recently and say, as a result of being part of the program, this and this has happened, or like any kind of like success stories that you like to point to and go, wow, that's really awesome?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a gentleman named Dominique who we work with. So Dominique was a young man. I would imagine some of you have met him or seen him. He's a young man who came to us through the juvenile home. We do a lot of programs in partnership with the juvenile home. And he was in the juvenile home for some very poor choices that he made when he was 16. And so we did a program at the juvenile home, and he was 17 at the time because he'd been there for a long time. And he was initially a kid who was not really buying what we were selling, wasn't really interested, and then we just kept coming back week after week. We did an 8-week program, and eventually by week 8, he was like, I drank the Kool-Aid, you sold me. I'm really interested. And so he earned his bike, and then he said, I want to work with you guys and I want to be an apprentice. And so we have apprentices that come to us, and we hire them for 8 weeks, and they work with us, and we pay them in our shop to kind of be a sales associate or a mechanic assistant or something like that. And Dominic said, I want to be that guy. And so he interviewed, we hired him. He later said, I got my bike fixed when you were at your garage program. And that's how I first saw you. And then so he initially came to the fix, and then he did an earner bike program, and then he became our apprentice. And then after he was done with his apprenticeship, I feel like I should talk quieter maybe to make sure that cries if anybody else wants to.
You have to talk over her.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I got 2 little brothers. She's
Yeah. All right, good. So he went through that progression. He finished his apprenticeship, and all of our staff said, "We don't want him. We don't want him to go. He's too good for our organization for us to let him walk away." And so my program manager at the time said, I think we need to offer him a job. And so we called him, and I said to him, I know your apprenticeship is done, but we really want you to stay along with us. And so we called him and offered him a job, and he still does programs for us. And he's also done a good deal of volunteering with us because he didn't really want to stop hanging out with our team. So when he came to us, he was on tether and still on probation, living at the juvenile home. And then as he progressed, he got off tether. He was off probation. He got his own apartment. He was living with his aunt, stopped living with his aunt, got his own apartment, enrolled at KVCC, and has stayed on with us as a part-time instructor. So were we entirely responsible for that transformation? No, we weren't. But I feel like we were a shift for him in which he said, I don't have to keep doing the stuff that I'm doing. I don't have to keep hanging out with the people I'm hanging out with because I see all these positive, supportive people who really like me and who believe in what I'm doing and who believe in me and who aren't going anywhere. And so we've stuck with him and he's stuck with us, and he's kind of told his story at various points, and at the risk of being melodramatic, he said at a certain point, "You guys saved my life. I wasn't going in good places, but because of kind of who this community was to me and what I was able to do, I turned a corner." So, and there are a couple of kids like that, or a couple examples of kids who have made a significant change and said, I believe in what you guys do and I want to stick around, and who have gone through all our program. We've hired 2 kids who have gone through the progression from just a program participant to a staff. We hired another young man named David. So it's been good. It's been good. I think we've assisted a couple kids in their own success. Yeah.
Great question. Are there any more questions?
I can speak loud.
Is this from Piper or from you?
This is from me.
Yeah, because if she wants to ask a question, it's all right.
She might interrupt.
That's all right.
I'm just curious as to, one of mine was the success stories. I was just interested in that, and it sounds like that was answered, and it's very clear.
Yeah.
What type of volume are you seeing? Like, how many kids are you seeing through a year, if you know that? And what's, with regards to like the budget or the annual revenue, what are you seeing for cost per kid or cost per unit of service?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll say 2 things about that. Number one, I'm so glad you asked. Number 2, I'm not a details person. Part of the reason that I knew that that I wasn't going to carry things forward is because I wasn't a details person. So I'm going to give you some answers that are mostly accurate from my understanding of things. So
I'll catch the video.
Sure. Yeah, it's all right. It's okay.
I'm listening.
Yeah. So we charge about $100 for a student to go through an 8-week program. And that's not the real cost of service, but it's the cost that we are able to, or the fee that we're able to charge because we get grant funding. I would imagine the real cost of a program is probably closer to $400 per student, but we get, and at this point, we probably serve about 350 to 400 students a year, meaning that we work with those students in various programs, whether through a school, through a neighborhood, through an Earn a Bike program, through a juvenile home program. We work with about 350 to 400 kids a year. But I think what we're realizing is the volume of kids is not as important as kind of the depth of relationship that we have. So one of the things that we did in response to that, because I used to try to have kind of this curve up where we would start with 4 kids and then we work up to like 20 kids and then we'd work up to like 400. And at a certain point, I think I was able to say we worked with over 500 kids in a year, but I realized that that just says we had lots of kids and lots of volume. So we wanted to go for more depth of relationship and started a youth advisory board. So now we have a group of 10 kids who serves in an advisory capacity, and they come to monthly meetings and get paid for those meetings so that they can kind of test out different components of our program. And so we have a mindfulness component to our program, and so they say, does that work? Is that kid friendly? Is that a good fit? And so they test out those components, and then they meet every month and get paid to kind of be our youth voice in the organization. So yes, we serve a good deal of kids, but I'm more proud of the depth of relationship that we have with some.
There's time for one more question. Anybody have one?
Okay, so you've stepped back a little bit right now, and what is coming up for Open Roads? Since you're in the new location, you're reaching out back into the neighborhoods in different capacities, and you have that new youth program where they're guiding what's going on. What's coming up in 2017?
Great question. So we have a retreat coming up in January where we're going to listen to our staff and listen to our board and get ideas. One thing I will tell you is that we're starting to focus more on riding. I realized that at a certain point we're so focused on fixing bikes and then we had no opportunity for kids to ride them. And I think it's kind of important for kids to ride bikes as well as fix them. So we're starting to focus on doing youth rides. We just had our youth advisory board go for a trip down the Calhaven Trail, like to the nature center. And so my vision and what I think our board is moving towards is finding a way to be more of a mechanic and riding mentorship program so kids can experience kind of the challenge of that riding piece and have the safety skills and kind of the commitment to be more aware of the training and physical health component of riding as well. So that's one of the things on tap. And I think we're also looking at kind of updating our social skills curriculum. The skills that we started with in 2008 are very, very different than the skills we have now. And that's largely because of our kids. Our kids have said, this really works well, this really doesn't. So we used to do a like 3-step component to listening and 3-step component to expressing your feelings. And that wasn't really exciting for kids for some reason. I can't imagine why, but it wasn't that exciting. So we started to do things more in self-control and more in mindfulness and more in how to be assertive without being aggressive. So more skills that I think are more real and practical to kids. So we're starting to rethink those social skills as well. Good questions, Jessica. Thanks.
So as kind of a follow-up to that last question, what about what's next for you? I mean, you started something, you got it to go, and you went through all this, you got it to go, you've stepped back somewhat, at least as far as running the organization. So do you see more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, the day that I stepped off of my position as director, I stepped on the board, the board of directors, and so I just became the board president. And so my role now is to kind of think long-term strategic planning, and I would like to find ways for us to expand our outreach, go to like Berrien County or something like that, and find a way to have more resources to do more things. Not to say that we don't have, not to say that we're not okay now, but to have more resources so we can have more options. So we're going to look at things like fundraising, things like expanding our grants, things so we can maybe have a bigger space, so we can have a bike shop. The other thing we do is, I didn't even mention, we have a bike shop in which we sell bikes that people donate to us. And so we want more space to be able to do that. So if somebody drops off a bike, we don't have to put it 3 high on a pile in the back room. So yeah, so my role on the board of directors is to think long-term and big picture, and so I'm really excited about getting the right people on board and finding the ways to engage with the community in different manners so we can expand.
So I go back to the part about Kalamazoo. So after having this experience, it just what you see the way Kalamazoo is, do you think there's anything missing as far as those who want to go through that kind of experience themselves, starting a business, or taking an idea out?
So I guess to answer your question, I don't, yeah, I feel like Kalamazoo is the kind of community where, I mean, sounds a little hokey, but where anything is possible, where you can do a ton of things. I mean, like, I just talked to a guy who is starting a company to make an accessory for bicycles to eliminate the blind spot and increase safety. I feel like there's the entrepreneurial and the innovation spirit in Kalamazoo, and so if somebody has a really good idea and they are tenacious and they stick with it and they believe in it and they say, you have got to jump on board with what I have, Kalamazoo is the place to do it. There are a lot of really open-minded and supportive people here, and sometimes you have to dig for them, but they're here.
I did see it, well, I guess it's in my flyer that I made, that you put that Kalamazoo is a magical place.
Yeah, it is.
So for the final, is there anything else that we haven't discussed that you wanted to add?
I guess the only thing that is left to say is I feel in a huge sense of gratitude in it, really powerful way for the people in Kalamazoo who have believed in us, the people who we have partnered with, the people who have come to a program, the people who have given $5, $10 to us over the years. I mean, we could have done nothing if people didn't in some way believe in us through donating a bike or donating their time or donating just their belief, giving us their belief and saying what you're doing is important and it matters. And so, I was a one person in the story, but hundreds and hundreds of people over the years have said that this means something to them and that they believe in it, and we couldn't have been where we are without every one of those people. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ethan. How about a round of applause?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.